Good morning, hello, dears grade 5. Today we have a new lesson. We will talk today about the friction force. First, we must know what is the meaning of friction force. When you feel cold, what you will do? I will do like that to feel hot, okay? To make my hands become hotter, okay? This is called the friction. So what I will do now with my hands, I touch this hand by the other hand, okay? So if I touch anything or two objects touch each other, so this is called the friction. So what is the meaning of the friction force? It is the force between two objects, okay? When they touch each other. If we have this bus now, the bus has a friction force here between the tires and the road, okay? So there is a friction force between the tires of the bus and the road. This bus will move in this direction, and the friction force will be in the opposite direction, okay? So if I'm moving now in this direction, so the friction force will be in the opposite direction of me, okay? Like we see here. What are the types of the friction? We have three types of friction. First, the friction between solids, or the friction between two objects, and these objects are solids. Number two, we have the friction between a solid object and the air. Number three, we have the friction between a solid object and the water. Okay, so we have three types of friction. First, we will talk about the friction between the two solids. Like that, as we said, okay? It's rubbing two hands together. There is a friction force between your hands, like what we can see here. Making like that, there is a friction between your hands, and your hands are solids. So we have a friction between two solids here. What else? If you are running like that, or you are walking, okay? Both of them are having friction. Having a friction between your legs and the road, okay? And the road is a solid, and your leg is a solid too. So we have here friction between two solid objects. Walking or running, there is a friction force between the shoe and the ground, okay? Friction between solids. What else like friction between solids? When you sliding on a slide like this, okay? When you're going down on a slide, there is a friction force between your body and the slide. What else? When you are driving a car, there is a friction between the tires of the car and the roads. Also, when you are riding a bike, okay? Also, there is a friction between the tires of the bicycle and the road, and both of them are solids. Now we want to know if there are any factors which affect on the friction, or there is no factors. We have factors which affect on the friction. First, the type of the surface material. Type of the surface material. We have two types of surface material. We have things which are smooth and things which are rough. First, when we have like this ball, it's moving on a smooth surface, and this ball will move on a rough surface. What you will expect about this? Which one will move faster? Yes, it's the ball which moves on the smooth surface, okay? But the one which will move on the rough surface, it will take more time than the other one, okay? So the types of surface material, friction decreases. What is the meaning of decreases? It will take a small time, or it will move faster, okay, on the smooth surface. But the friction will increase, okay? Increase, it means that it will take more time to move on the rough surface. What else about the factors which are affecting the friction? Number 2, we have the speed, okay? There is a direct relation between the speed and the friction force. What is the meaning of direct relation? Direct relation means that if you increase the speed of a moving object, so the friction force will increase, and vice versa. Vice versa means if we decrease the speed of the moving object, so the friction force will be decreased, okay? The last one, we have the surface area. What is the meaning of surface area? It is the space which is taken by the body, okay? If we have very, very big body moving and a small body will move, okay? So the friction force between the road and a big car will be more than the friction force between the road and a small car which will move on it, okay? So there is a direct relation also between the surface area and the friction force, okay? If we increase the surface area of the object, so the friction force will increase. And if we decrease the surface area of the object, so the friction force will decrease. As we can see here, okay? By increasing the surface area of a moving object, friction increases, and vice versa. So there is a direct relationship between the surface area and the friction force. Okay? We will talk about the second type of the friction force. What is this? This is the friction between a solid object and the air. Okay? Like what? Like, or the friction force that arises between an object and air, it's called the air resistance. So it has another name, okay? We can say it is the resistance between solids and air, or we will say it is the air resistance, okay? And this is called the friction between the air and the solid, okay? Also, the air resistance will be in the opposite direction of the object. If I'm moving here in the air, or any car will move in the air, the opposite direction, there will be the friction force. Like what? Like the planes which fly in the air, or the birds which fly in the air, okay? There is a friction force now between the solid object and the air which surrounds this object, okay? And this friction force, or the air resistance, okay, we will say it, certainly the air resistance. It will be in the opposite direction of the moving plane. Also, if we have a car, okay, this moving car have a friction between its body and the air surround it. And also, any person will run, okay? You will run in open air, so the air will surround you everywhere. So there will be a friction between your body, which is a solid, and the air around you. If you also riding a bike, okay? The bike, it's a solid object, and the air around you, so there will be an air resistance. Okay, now we will talk about the factors which affects on the air resistance. As we said in the friction, there are 3 factors, but here we will talk only about 2 factors, okay? First, we will talk about the speed, okay? If we have, like this car, when we have a very, very big speed, so we will have a big air resistance and vice versa. So also there is a direct relationship. Direct relationship means what? When we increase the speed, what will happen to the air resistance? It will increase. And when we decrease the speed, what will happen to the air resistance? It will be decreased, okay? Factors affecting air resistance, like what? Like number 2, the surface area. As we said also in the friction. When we have this car which have a big surface area and this one is small, okay? Which one will have the smallest air resistance? This car, okay? Why? Because it has the smallest surface area and it's the smallest car, okay? But here, this have a big surface area, so it will have the biggest air resistance. Okay? What we will include, or what are the benefits from studying the air resistance? We have life applications or something. We have the advantage of the air resistance, okay? Like what? When we design a train or the modern cars, they make a streamlined shape like that, okay? They have a small surface area in the beginning of the body of the car, okay? Or the train or the rockets. Why? To decrease the surface area, so the air resistance will be decreased and the car or the train will be faster, okay? So we have the streamlined shape. The streamlined shape makes what? Decrease the surface area. And when we decrease the surface area, so the air resistance will be decreased, okay? Another life application. If I want to land from the plane or a bird wants to land from the sky, what it will do? It will stretch its wings, okay? Or if I'm landing from a plane, I will open the parachute. The parachutist open the parachute, okay? What will happen if the parachutist open the parachute? It will increase the surface area, okay? When we increase the surface area, what will happen to the air resistance? It will increase. Why? Because we said that there is a direct relation between the air resistance and the surface area. So what will happen? This parachutist will have a safely landing on the earth, okay? Or the bird will have a safely landing on the earth, okay? So using the parachute during landing to increase the surface area and the air resistance will increase, okay? The last one, or the last type of the friction between the air is the solid and water, okay? What is the meaning of this? When we have an object which swim in water or moving in the water, and there will be a friction between this object and the water. And this is called the water resistance. So we talked about the air resistance. It is the friction between the body and the surrounding air. And here, the water resistance, it is the friction between the object and the water. Okay? Also, the water resistance will be at the opposite direction of the moving body. Like what? Like swimming. When you are swimming in the sea or in the pool, okay? If you are moving in this direction, the water resistance will be in the opposite direction. Like the fish, when it moves in the sea or it moves in the water, okay? So its body will have a friction between it and the water. So there will be the water resistance, okay?